my wife's a garage sale collector. She's at every rummage sale you'll ever see. She buys the clothes and never stops to check them. She just bags them up and brings them home to me.
Okay guys, today we're at the bins sorting through, in this particular case I'm doing the book bins, which I don't show too often to you guys, but they were very full today and not too many people looking through them, so I decided to go ahead and take advantage of that and head over and sort through them. Now, almost all of these were contemporary books. There were a few interesting, like this one, which I'll show at the haul, one that I picked up. And again, when I'm at the bins, my philosophy is I look for major titles in early editions. I also look for unusual books that you don't see every day. This one intrigued me. I almost picked it up, but then decided against it. And so it's just kind of, I can't say as I have a specific method, but I picked up these juggling books just because they're fun, they're different. They weren't complete because usually they come with the little beanbag things to juggle with, but those weren't. And many times I pick up those golden books, but I have so many of those right now, I decided I'm not picking up anymore unless it's like one of the early editions of them. This is a fun little, it's a New Testament book, but a little more damage than I want to deal with right now. I'm trying to be very picky about the books I'm picking up and that they are in good shape. There was one I really wanted, but the cover was missing, and yeah, I just felt very sorry for it. But it was a fabulous old book. But you know, when you're missing parts, not necessarily the best thing to do. There are a lot of horticultural books in today's lot, and I thought about picking some of them up, but I didn't. I did pick up one, which I'll show you here in a minute, or it's coming up. Because again, kind of like that book, they weren't in the best of condition. They were well used. They were probably, someone who used them quite frequently, and as reference books, and so they were not in the best of condition. And they're not the most exciting of titles either. As far as their long tail items. And some books are, and that's fine, but I've just got a number of those, so I'm looking for items that might be a little quicker. Here's a country cookbook, farmer's magazine. I'm picking up cookbooks because I realized I really don't have very many cookbooks for my cookbook shelf, so I'm starting to pick up more for that. And I like the older ones, or like that one that's a little more comprehensive. This was a book that I picked up also. I'll explain a little bit more in the haul video about it, but it still has me intrigued. It's not quite what I thought it was, and I'm not exactly sure what they intended for it to be, so I'll have to look at it a little closer, but I read a little bit of it in the haul. So yeah, so again, I'm just kind of sorting through all of these things. And then eventually here the Amazon people show up, the ones that pick up all the newer books for Amazon. And so then I actually circle back to the book bins. This is a cool little book I'll show in the haul too. I circle back because a lot of these, because of the way they fill up their cart and then they go through them all, scanning them. So it's kind of nice because they leave all the old books, and then it's easier for me to get to them, because sometimes a couple of these bins were piled really high. So, and you can tell I'm just gravitating towards the older covers and stuff. So that's kind of what I do when I'm at the bins. So here's another one using wayside plants. So yeah, there are a lot of those. There it is. Flower Growing in the North. I've sold this book before. It's actually a pretty collectible book. It was written by a local person and published by the University of Minnesota Press. So it has some local ties. And so I picked it up again, and this one still had its dust jacket on too, although the dust jacket's kind of in bad shape. And I picked up this Miro book. Again, I'll show you what I got in the haul, so be sure to stay tuned. I'm already telling you a lot that I picked up in the haul, I guess, as we go along, but that's okay. To find all of them, you'll have to wait till the end in the haul, so you know exactly what I got. But as you can tell from this haul, it's probably going to be books, right? Anyway, yeah, still just kind of sorting through. Got to dig to the bottom. And this was after the Amazon people have been through here, so there were fewer books, so it's kind of nice. A little easier to get in here and get to the bottom, where typically the older ones fall to. And some cool kids books, but I have tons of kids books right now, and none of them, got me too excited to want to pick them up at this point. But that is kind of my process of going through the bins of books. Again, they have 4 of what they call boats. We call them bins, but 4 boats full of books. So that's a lot. Oh, there's a Pokemon book. I didn't even see that. But I did see this Word on Fire Bible, so I grabbed that. More for me. I was going to go through it. It's kind of unique little book. But I missed a Pokemon book that I could have checked out that. Anyway, now we're at the household bins, just sorting through. Yeah, there's this one. The first one, which it's kind of weird, but the very first bin I usually stop at, because I go the same way every time. Usually I find my best items in the first one or the last bin of that row. In this case, the first bin was all electronics. Didn't really find much. This bin was piled really high, and when bins are really full, people don't like to dig to the bottom. So that's what you see me doing here. I'm digging to the bottom, and that's many times where I find some good items. Because on the initial run, people just run through, pick up stuff off the top that they see, and I just sit and dig to the bottom. Because I'm not in a hurry. I'm like, whatever. I don't have to find the greatest things on top. I find my things on the bottom. So I just sat there and just kept sorting through till I got to the bottom. Not too much there. Here's another bin full of electronics. All the cords it's always a tangled mess. It's really difficult if you find something that you want, because you gotta try to untangle everything. So here I am putting stuff back together. There's this little box, puzzle box kind of thing, modern piece. And that was a nice little halogen light, but don't need it. And again, this was a hodgepodge. Here's a printer I'm putting back in the electronics bin because I wanted it out of my way. Yeah, sometimes I sit and try to organize the bins. I don't know why, but there's so much chaos. It's like you want some sort of order somewhere, right? But it's an endless task, if you will, especially at the bins. So still looking, again, not too much exciting. A lot of modern stuff. This is a Disney piece from Beauty and the Beast. Battery powered cow. Yeah, just a cheap, inexpensive one. Not a good collectible one. And sorting through. Not really finding too much today. And I don't know, because it was my last day of going to the bins on a Monday, which has been my routine for probably close to 2 years now. It's kind of a nostalgic day for me. Because next week we're actually out of town, and then the week after that I start my new job. So it's like, okay, kind of sad. Here's a package full of yarn, and I'm looking for cotton yarn because my mom wants cotton yarn, so I keep my eyes open for that. I pick it up when I find it, especially at the bins because it's cheap there. So yeah, still just sorting through stuff, trying to find things. There's some vintage placemats, like the travel ones, different locations around the world. And There are a lot of Mr. Potato Heads in here. A broken old thermometer. Mr. Potato Heads and Mr. Potato Head parts were all throughout this bin. So there was somebody's big collection got dumped in here, or a store's pile or something. Nope, little wooden bird. He was mounted on something, I think, originally, so put him aside. Sometimes those wooden carved animals can be worth some money. And I just keep plugging along, hoping to find something. Not too much yet. Another bin full of electronics. Yeah. Another bin full of electronics. There's a little jewelry box. Oh yeah, it's cute, but don't need it. Decided against it. Lampshade. These were fun. I didn't pick any of these up, but these are vintage placemats, disposable ones. I probably could have, but again, it's one of those things of they're large, they take up a lot of space. Don't know where I would keep them, and figured it was better I just leave. And they were kind of heavy, so they were going to cost quite a bit, and I don't think they really would have been worth that much money. I've tried selling stuff like that before, like down at the Pink Elephant, but not had much luck. Even though they're very cute, I think they would work well, but and then they're fairly large and heavy to ship on eBay right now, so they would cost quite a bit. So I don't think I could sell them for very much. So it was one of those dilemmas of where would you sell them, because there's just, they have several things against them, unfortunately. If I had more space at the Pink Elephant, they would be okay, but so yeah, so there were those that were the kind of the spring ones, and then there's these, which are kind of like the fall design, which I thought, oh, this would be a good time right now, but again, I'm kind of like, I don't know. There's paint by number kit. There's more, just plain placemats. Oh, trying to sort through the junk. I mean, fabulous merchandise in the bins. And I was disappointed in that there really were not any good vintage items in here. Which, of course, you guys know that's what I'm really after when I'm at the bins. We find some great items sometimes, but other days, not so much. And today was one of those not so much days. So I'll run with what we found so far. Hello everyone, welcome to Clay's Collections. I hope you enjoyed our little shop along video there. Today's one of those nostalgic days because it's the last time I go to the bins on a Monday morning, because I'm going to be starting my full-time job in a couple weeks, and we're out of town next week, so it's kind of a historic day. Kind of sad. And yeah, as you can tell, the bins today were filled with a lot of electronics. So there was a lot more than normal. And this is kind of how it seems like they do. They must pile up their electronics for a while and then just put them out at one time. Because the household stuff, usually if you run into one bin with electronics, and there's kind of scattered in the household bins. But today it was bin after bin after bin of electronics. So, for those guys that resell electronics, it's great. For those of us who don't, it's kind of a disappointment. So I did the book bins, and I was kind of disappointed. Not too many good vintage antique books that I like, but I did find some good things. I actually didn't buy any household stuff. There just wasn't a lot for me at this stage of where I'm at, because I'm kind of like what I've talked before. I'm kind of shifting over to the book realm and getting out of the other household item stuff. So going forward, it's going to be more books, artwork, that type of stuff that I'm going to focus on, just because that's more my love. And since it'll be much limited time wise, I figured I might as well just go with what we love, right? So speaking of that, let's get into this. I picked up several what I would call reference books, but it's surprising that sometimes even reference books have value. Obviously, somebody was an art lover And so like I picked up this one. This is a Miro. He's an artist, modern artist. This is a book on his sculptures. The Walker Art Center is our Walker Art Museum is art. It's called the Walker Art Center, but it's a museum, art museum. Is our local Minneapolis museum, and they do different exhibits. And in the 70s, they did a Miro exhibit, and so this book was part of that exhibit, and so it just talks about the different sculptures that were on the exhibit. But this book, there's multiple ones listed, none have sold. There's multiple ones listed on eBay from $25 to $400. But this particular version is like $25 to $50 is what they're listed for. None of them sold, but again, it's a local item, so this is going to go down to the Pink Elephant, and because it has the additional brochure talking about this particular exhibit from 1976, we'll leave that in there and probably list this one for $15 to $20, somewhere in that range, because I do think 25 is a bit much for something like that. It's a very specific audience. And then I also picked up this one, which is Primitive Art Masterworks, similar period of time, and the Walker Art Center. So again, somebody went to this exhibit, the Masterworks from the Museum of Primitive Art from 1976, and they bought this book to go along with it, which this book is from 1974. And what's cool about this one, it talks about the regional differences of primitive art. So like here's the Americas, then there's another one on Africa, and there's another one in Oceania. So it's really kind of fun. It just talks about the differences of the artwork in the different regions of the world from a primitive art perspective, which is one of the most, I feel, the most difficult to truly define, because there's so many copies, so much, deception in a lot of the artwork that's done, or just reproductions, modern, not intentionally created to deceive, but there's a lot that are created to deceive. So it's hard to know. So anyway, the other one I picked up is this one. This was for me. It's the Word on Fire Bible. Never saw this particular Bible, but it is just the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, with additional support information and stories and that type of stuff. So I thought that was a pretty fun little book. It's worth about $15 if I wanted to sell that. It is very clean and great condition. And I picked up this one just because it kind of fascinated me. Clifford and John's Almanac. Notice how it's spelled with the K at the end as opposed to just the C. And this is from 1921. And it's an almanac, but it's full of stories, little short stories, and different people. These look like actually, what do I want to say? Tributes on headstones, on graves. Because like this one, Archbishop Laud beheaded 1645. She was a romantic celibate. He was a sensuous idealist. He wanted Aspasia and got a nun. She wanted Galahad and got a man. Yeah. Interesting little things. It's very unusual. I can't find any information on it. It's written by these two guys and illustrated by another person. Oh, here's, I was like, where's the illustrations? There's an illustration. Almost looks like a woodcut, or yeah, looks more like a kind of a woodcut type of illustration. Anyway, so the other one I found, and I've sold this one before actually. It's a locally published piece. It's published in Minneapolis, this book, Flower Growing in the North. I actually sold the last copy to one of my subscribers. This one I'm planning on putting down at the Pink Elephant because it's talking about specifically growing flowers in our particular region of the country. And this is a month-by-month guide put out by the Department of horticulture at the University of Minnesota. So this is published by the University of Minnesota Press. So yeah, great local item, which I like keeping those up at the Pink Elephant. Now this one, interesting. I'm looking forward to actually reading this one. The title of the book is, and it's really hard to see, it's up here. It was a tough life, but someone had to do it. And Fred Brady is the author. It's a self-published piece and self-illustrated. So here's a picture illustration of him. And he basically tells stories of his whole life. This is from in 1989. And here's what he says on the dedication of the book. He says, dedication, the epistle of my life stories dedicated to my father and my mother, Clarence and Catherine Brady, for their guidance and counseling during my formative years, to his brother Frank, my partner in childhood and business in later years, to my wife, who through her understanding and forgiveness and constant efforts and dedication to properly raise her children made my life possible and most enjoyable, and to his sons who helped create many of the most enjoyable and memorable times of my life. So it's a little autobiography. So I'm looking forward to reading that and just seeing what he comes up with. Again, value, a couple bucks. But that's the kind of stuff I like putting down too at the Pink Elephant. Just those little folk tales, if you will. So I got someone itching my nose. Picked up this little Hamilton Beach food mixer, instructions and tested recipes. This is obviously, when is this from? 1948. Again, more cookbooks, recipes, Hamilton Beach mixers. People love these old mixers. And those books actually are like $10. They sell for around $10. So this book, Athens in the Age of Pericles by Robinson, University of Oklahoma Press. The interesting thing about this one was there's an inscription in the front page. And it's Lindsay G. Arthur. It's dated 1966. But he was a district court judge here in Minneapolis. And he wrote many different books. He did not write this particular book, but he bought it and gave it as a gift to his dad. And he goes, to my father, this is my dream, that the beauty of Athens may be reborn, that its music may agitate our blood in unseen certainty, that an indifferent world may stand up and dream with me. So he, you know, Lindsay G. Arthur is, if you look him up, he's known for a number of different publications, law publications, because he was a judge, but he also owned a very successful law firm. But also, he wrote a novel. So that one has some value just because of the signatures. Picked up another cookbook, because I realized I don't have that many cookbooks. So, Farm Journals Country Cookbook, $15, $20 book. Beautiful condition in the sense that it's got, you know, no damage, no writing, and still got this dust jacket, little dust, but that always cleans off. Then I picked up two of these Juggling for the Complete Klutz books. These do not have they came with little bean bags to juggle. This is the newer version, and this is the revised second edition from 1981. The original first version was 1977, this one's 1981, and this one is from 1920. It says the last revision was 1994, but this one is a modern publishing, probably from the last 10 to 15 years that one was published. All right, I did pick up a record. Tuba is Beautiful by Stan Fries. And what's interesting, this is again a local piece, that's why I grabbed it. It says, to those of you who have never heard of Stan Fries, let me explain. He may just be the world's greatest tuba player. If he isn't, this writer is yet to hear the best. Many of you have seen or heard him perform with the University of Minnesota Band or during one of his many personal appearances, which include at least one national network radio show. So I just thought that was awesome. So I had to pick it up. When is this from? Does it have a date on it? Nope, no date on it. I would say this is probably from the early 80s. Personally, is kind of how I think it is, but I'll have to look him up. But yeah, you don't find many tuba records. But I was going to put that down to Pink Elephant. Okay, now we have two interesting books, little tiny books. This is the Nuts English-French Conversation Dictionary. So this is English to French. And what's interesting about this one is it's published in London by David Nutt. And if you flip the page, this publisher actually did a good number of different of these pocket dictionaries. But it says Edinburgh T&A Constable, printers to His Majesty. So that tells us that this was obviously pre-Queen Elizabeth. And I would say it was probably based on some things, probably 1920s. But because of things, but the publisher to His Majesty means that he had the royal, what do they call it? Basically royal approval. In other words, he was a preferred publisher to the royal family. So if you have to go through all of this, you know, what I want to say, qualifications to get to be a royal vendor, and this particular guy was. So that tells you that the quality that these people produce is a very high quality. Anytime you see that publisher or manufacturer or supplier or any of the terminology they may use for stuff. So that's a great thing to look for, because if you see that on English pieces, you know they're of higher quality than just the run-of-the-mill. Now, this book is really intriguing to me as well. It is in Spanish, so I'll have to have my Spanish-speaking friends like my wife and my friend Gilbert or Ruth translate it for me. And it's interesting, there is a signature on the title page, which usually means the author, but in this case it's not, because this guy is much older than the book. But these are rhymes and poems by Gustavo Adolfo Bécquer. I'm sure I'm butchering the way to pronounce that, but yeah, I was very fascinated by this, and I'm like, oh, I wonder, printed in Spain. But I also love, not only that, but I love the green front and cover pages. It's all the little symbols on it. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting distracted. It is a leather cover, and it is embossed with different emblems on it, which I think is really cool. And it's in great condition for the age. Again, I don't know, it doesn't have a date printed on it, but just a great little book. Anyway, that is our bins haul for today. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Catch you next time.